Talking About Marketing is a podcast for business owners and leaders, produced by Steve Davis and David Olney of Talked About Marketing. More than 8,000 conversations have taught them something. You can't read the label from inside the bottle. Everyone needs external perspective. Through their 4 Ps: person, principles, problems, and perspicacity. Yes, you heard that correctly. They explore marketing with curiosity, generosity, and the occasional gentle eye roll. They hope this becomes a trusted companion on your journey in business.
David, can I ask you a personal question?
Of course you can.
When you are here in the studio and we're recording the podcast or doing work for clients, do you use all of your brain?
I would have said historically the answer to that is no, until I started studying neurology and realised that actually our brain does want to use different bits and get involved, and that over the time it takes to record an episode, I hopefully am using my whole brain.
I disagree. Well, actually, let me correct that. I actually think you are using characters 1, 4, and 3 primarily.
I'll agree with that. Yep.
Yeah. And we'll explain what the heck that means in just a moment.
Our 4 Ps. Number 1, person. These are insights for the whole person, not just the business operator. Oscar Wilde put it this way: the aim of life is self-development, to realise one's nature perfectly. That's what each of us is here for.
We have a fascinating person segment to get into today. And again, just like last episode, we found a book that warrants 2 bites of the cherry in both the person and the principle segment. So we'll keep it as limited to each of those fields as possible to extract as much goodness. So it's a book called Whole Brain Living by Jill Bolte Taylor. And perhaps, David, before I look at the characters, would you like to describe Jill as you did to me to bait the hook to get me to read?
Absolutely. Jill Bolte Taylor is an amazing lady. She has one of the most famous and popular TED Talks in history. At the time of publishing of the book we're talking about, her TED Talk had already had 25 million views. And her TED Talk is called My Stroke of Insight, which was all about the fact that as a 36-year-old university professor in neurology, she had a monumental stroke.
I grew up to study the brain because I have a brother who has been diagnosed with a brain disorder, schizophrenia. And as a sister and later as a scientist, I wanted to understand, why is it that I can take my dreams, I can connect them to my reality, and I can make my dreams come true? What is it about my brother's brain and his schizophrenia that he cannot connect his dreams to a common and shared reality, so they instead become delusion? So I dedicated my career to research into the severe mental illnesses, and I moved from my home state of Indiana to Boston, where I was working in the lab of Dr. Francine Bennis in the Harvard Department of Psychiatry. And in the lab, we were asking the question, what are the biological differences between the brains of individuals who would be diagnosed as normal control, as compared with the brains of individuals diagnosed with schizophrenia, schizoaffective, or bipolar disorder? So we were essentially mapping the microcircuitry of the brain, which cells are communicating with which cells, with which chemicals, and then in what quantities of those chemicals. But on the morning of December 10, 1996, I woke up to discover that I had a brain disorder of my own. A blood vessel exploded in the left half of my brain. And in the course of 4 hours, I watched my brain completely deteriorate in its ability to process all information. On the morning of the hemorrhage, I could not walk, talk, read, write, or recall any of my life. I essentially became an infant in a woman's body.
The left side of her brain was basically offline for 35 days. They did major surgery on day 8 after her stroke, not really knowing how much she could recover. And it took her 8 years to recover. And in the process of recovering, it gave her a whole new deep insight into how the brain works and into how we can help our own brain work better. And she's just a marvel that she's been through so much and come out of it utterly inquisitive about the part of her that went wrong. And I think she would argue, in a lot of ways, has come out working better after everything she's been through than it was before.
Yeah, and that was enough to make me very curious. And what she's done in this book is, in reflecting on the way the brain has evolved over time, where the early bits in the base central parts were first, and then other bits have evolved onto it later. And you step in if you think I've gone down the rocky road, David.
Well, the easiest way to define that for everyone is all animals, whatever they are, have a brain stem.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't matter if you're a tiny little lizard or us. You've got a brain stem. More advanced animals have emotional centers like the limbic system. And this is why she can make the book, or make the comment throughout the book, we're a feeling creature who sometimes thinks.
That's
and
right.
then for humans, we've got the neocortex, the new cortex, on top of everything, which is where we think and we know we're thinking.
The way she maps it is this. We have 4 main characters in our brain, which, as David mentioned, when half her brain shut down, that's when she noticed the difference. With her background, she could interpret it correctly. So let me have a stab at describing this to you. We all have these 4 characters, and in some of us, 1, 2, or more of them are more dominant than the others, but at any time they can swap roles, and what she'll argue shortly is we can facilitate the shifting of who's in a dominant position, who being one of the characters. So the first one is on the left side of the brain. It's the thinking side, the left thinking side. So this is your planner. This is the logic-driven part of you that sets goals, that is on time, that uses a calendar, and so a very type A side. And after each of these, David, have you got a footnote to add?
Very important one, and that is that left thinking is where language comes from. Mm-hmm. So whatever any other part of the brain is thinking about, it's left thinking that turns that input into language that allows us to sit here and record a podcast and interact with each other.
Which is fascinating for a totally different conversation, because there's a fantastic seminal book called The Master and His Emissary on this field, and it explains that in more detail, but that's for another day.
Yes.
So character 1, left thinking, so you've got language, you've got logic, all that happening there. Also on the left side, there's an emotional quadrant. So the cells here are the ones responsible for sending us the signals of anxiety. They are really focused on protecting us. So they've got that hair trigger of, oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no. That is right there. They also look for blame, and they hold on to grudges as well. They remember those things. And their constant voice is, what if I fail? What if I fail? What if I fail? What would you add, David?
Catastrophe on the way, catastrophe on the way.
Yeah. Henny penny, the sky is falling.
Yes.
That's another character. We all have the left emotion side. We then have character 3, the right emotional side. This is the one that seeks joy, that really lives in the present moment, has great curiosity. It doesn't just walk past a little weed on the crack in the pavement. It goes, oh, look at that. I wonder how that grew there, etc. It's easily distracted as well, possibly by little weeds growing out of cracks in pavements. And its constant question is, what's next? What's next? What's next? What would you add?
And it has no sense of time. It just wants fun. So for me, the most likely thing that will get me into character 3, right, emotional, is picking up a guitar. And I will then lose all track of time.
Oh.
And just have fun and get completely lost in it.
I was hoping you were going to say spending time with me, but...
Yeah, but we're talking, so I'm trying to limit it to one bit of my brain.
Okay. And the last one, character 4, is our right thinking side of the brain. So this is where we get calm. Things get integrated. We can see how things connect, which, as a point, by the way, number 1 was how things are different. It's always comparing what separates this from that, whereas character 4 is looking at what we've got in common. It has the visions. It looks at the big picture. It loves having a core set of values to operate from. What would you add?
Parallel processing. It can see all the pieces and understand how they relate to each other. Whereas left thinking will have an idea of one piece of something and it will logically extrapolate that if I've got this bit and I'm correct because I'm character 1, that the next thing has to be this.
My word of caution, but it's not a serious caution, is that once you read this book and you think about these things, it's hard to unsee them. I have caught myself in different states of emotion, and I am developing this little habit of going, oh, hang on a minute. That's a bit I said it today over lunch. That was a bit character 2 of me just then. And that's what we come up with. So in the person segment, how we make the rubber hit the road here, what does this mean for us? Jill has this practice. It's called the Brain Huddle. I forget what all the letters in.
I remember what they stand for, so when you want me to, I can go through that.
Okay, David, let your character 1 go for it and tell us what brain stands for in the Brain Huddle.
So what Jill is asking us to do really is to recognise which character's in charge, question if that's the path we want to go down, and work out what other things we could do if we got the other characters in our brain involved. So brain breaks down to 5 steps. B is breathe. What she's found is if you take 90 seconds of breathing slowly and deeply, you can calm yourself to the point where any major emotional thing that was going on will calm down to the point where you can use whatever bit of your brain you want. R is for recognise. Recognise which character was in charge. So your comment at lunch of, oh, that was a bit character 2. Well, something was tending a little bit towards anxiety, negativity, something could go wrong, and you wanted to question that. And recognising who was in charge is really important. For Jill, the next step is A, which is appreciate. What she found from her own recovery is you can't bully any part of your brain into being quiet and letting another bit have a go. You've got to appreciate that they're trying to look after you. So she'll make the point that regularly when character 2, left emotional, goes off with a potential catastrophe, she'll say, thank you, character 2. Really appreciate how much you were trying to protect us. I think we're okay at the moment to at least explore whether there are other options other than catastrophizing. So I in brain is for inquire, which is, okay, other characters, what would you be interested in trying to do in this situation? And once you've got some other ideas, N is for negotiate. And this is that in her recovery, she found that any time she tried to bulldoze behaving with one character over others, it just created a swirling mess of exhaustion. But that through negotiation going, look, we could try a right thinking brain character 4 based plan with left emotional character 2 paying attention if it sees the catastrophe coming. How does everyone feel about that? And she found by approaching it that way, it sped up her recovery and allowed her to function in a way she enjoyed a lot more and that was more productive.
I think that really does ground what this brings to the table. So in day-to-day life, in particular, I think it's fair to say the one she's most sensitive about is character 2, because that's the one with the big attention-grabbing emotional flourishes that tend, not always, even though they might be well-meaning, they do tend to be at the negative end of the spectrum, doing us damage, making us look worse, impacting our relationships worse. She said, if two people meet and they're both in a state of character 2,
it only ends poorly.
It ends poorly. One of them has to change. And I think the beautiful gift that this book reminds us to do is, you know what? At a very physical, biological level, this rush of those feelings of potential anger or dread or whatever take about 90 seconds to work their way through the circuits. So if you are aware of that, and we can take a step outside to the room, go, and you've heard people say, go for a little walk around the park. Now we know
why.
It's different. It's less dramatic. It's got less dominant grip if we can do this. I hope we could all earnestly apply this extra bit of spatial approach to anything we encounter, to be aware of who's dominant in our head, and that is the major part of the battle.
And I think the two things I've seen in so many small business people that is worth adding to this is someone who spends a lot of time in character 1 doing linear ego-based planning with a sense of going, this is different to this is different to this, where their linear plan makes sense in and of its narrow context, but their narrow plan can't stand meeting the reality of the bigger, broader context of the world. So the linear plan seems fine to character 1, left thinking. But if character 4, right thinking, had a chance to look at the plan in terms of all the other things going on, the context wouldn't hold up. And the other thing I've seen a lot in small business is people who, when they're really excited about a new product or a new activity, they're in the moment of character 3 in right brain emotional, and they're enjoying something and all they want to do is share it with other people. But that bit of our brain doesn't plan. It just does things in the moment. You know, like a summer storm, it happens and then it's gone. There's no structure to that can be used to bake it into a business, bake it into a business offer, do the calculation of, is this going to increase sales? Is this going to increase profit? You know, a brilliant idea is only brilliant in the moment if we can then transfer it to systematized planning in a structured way we can keep doing day in, day out.
So the key point here to round off our person segment is we've got 4 characters. We might like some more than the others, but we have a better life if we can have all 4 of them playing nicely with each other.
Absolutely. And back to Steve's comment at the start of he neglected to say, you know, I use character 2. And, you know, he was right on the money with that. And it's important for probably me to quickly explain why. I walk around the world every day using a piece of aluminium to find my way in the world, a white cane. If I gave in to character 2's desire to catastrophize, I probably wouldn't leave the house. So I have to be really careful, one, that I don't give in to character 2, but also I have a tendency to accept high risk because I don't listen to character 2. So I also have to be careful of that by shutting it down. So everything in your brain comes with a plus and a minus, and balance is always better than not balance.
Good. Well, to celebrate the change of leadership in Hungary, I've got an old bottle of something that's 18 years old. It's almost finished. A little bit of mould on the side. We'll have a little try afterwards. Let's test your appetite for risk.
Only a bit of risk. It'll be fine.
Our 4 Ps. Number 2, principles. These are ideas worth building on. As Oscar Wilde reminded us, you can never be overdressed or overeducated.
In the principle segment, I want to keep us getting as much as we can from this book, because I will say, David, if anyone does choose to listen to it, and it might also happen if you read it too, I ran hot and cold with this book. It wasn't just Jill's manner of speaking, it was the content. The opening bit where she laid down, quite frankly, how amazing she is with this, a superb TED Talk that's the best ever in the world. Everything in me just wanted to stop listening. And then when she gets into talking to character 4, she will often really switch over into deep spiritual language in a way that jarred with me. And I don't think it needed it, but it panders to a certain audience in particular. And so I really struggled to keep on task with this. But I think you'll agree, David, it is worth putting up with this because there is gold in what she's pulled together.
Absolutely. And in particular with character 4. Character 4 can make you really feel, religious faith strongly. But it can also make you feel awe for nature strongly. So character 4 is all about the enormity of the world, and you are an intrinsic and well-connected part of it. And she recommends, reading work by Andrew Newberg, another neurologist, and I've read a lot of Andrew's work, and I love his work because he said, in reality, you put a Buddhist monk or nun, in an MRI, or you put a rock climber who's climbed without ropes to the top of a crazy high peak, and you have both of them remember praying or remember climbing that, that rock face. Same bit of the brain lights up. Awe and spirituality are very similar in our brain, and it really comes down to how you personally live out being in character 4. And yeah, there's bits of the book where if I hadn't known about Newberg, I would have found it very frustrating to have such a big emphasis on spirituality when that's just one way character 4 can manifest.
So this is the business focus for principles. So I'm just going to very lightly recap how those characters apply to the business world. But then, David, I want us to ground it into what this might mean for us.
Who are we? We are the life force power of the universe with manual dexterity and 2 cognitive minds. And we have the power to choose moment by moment who and how we want to be in the world. Right here, right now, I can step into the consciousness of my right hemisphere where I am the life force power of the universe. I am the life force power of the 50 trillion beautiful molecular geniuses that make up my form, at one with all that is. Or I can choose to step into the consciousness of my left hemisphere, where I become a single individual, a solid, separate from the flow, separate from you. I am Dr. Jill Bolte Taylor, intellectual, neuroanatomist. These are the we inside of me. Which would you choose? Which do you choose? And when?
So character 1 is the plan-driven, I guess we'd say here. Many owners are like this. They're looking for efficiency. They've got deadlines to meet. They've got spreadsheets where their world is contained. That's character 1 at work. Character 2 at work is where they have this protective side, the anxious side to protect their business. This comes up when you hear yourself saying, oh, we can't afford this, or oh, what if this fails, or who was responsible for this? That's your character 2 in the workplace. Character 3 is where we've got the experiential side, the playful side. If you find yourself in a creative zone, you want to improvise, you're seeing the value of connecting relationship-wise with other people, either internally or with other suppliers or whatever. This is that at play. And number 4 here is the visionary side and even the calming side. So this is when you're finding yourself drawn towards thinking about your values, thinking about the culture you are creating, and thinking about what your ethos is long term. I think that's a pretty decent summary in how characters map to common business scenarios.
Absolutely. We could add a lot more detail, but it will make more sense if you read the book, and then we can add more detail. But that's plenty to give people a reason to think about, how am I going to look at every big decision and every new situation from a broader perspective. If you can look at them from all 4 of these, your depth of insight is going to be greater, and you're not going to be blindsided by things you didn't notice.
So, here's how the rubber hits the road. We talked about doing a brain huddle with ourselves when we catch ourselves out in a state that surprises us or is not optimal. But in business, how does this work? Well, a couple of interesting thoughts before we talk about a business brain huddle is that it might sound like this. There's a bit of argy-bargy going on at work, and someone says, you know what, is this conversation mostly about safety and risk, which is character 2, or is it about numbers and deadlines, which is more character 1, or is it feelings and relationships, which is more 3 and 4? One of the things that's interesting here is that if you and your close team are aware of this character framework, having that moment to reflect on, which character is this, plays a really important role because it depersonalizes the situation. And it gives everyone, I guess, that psychological and physical breathing space to not be in battle mode, but go, yes, it's a fresh take. Would you agree?
Absolutely. Like, we've all been on a team, in a team with a very strong character too, who catastrophizes, sees the worst in everything. But being able to say in a meeting, okay, let's question safety and risk now, all of us together. Give that person the floor, listen to them, come up with sensible responses to all the risks, work out all the ways to maintain the safety. So if they can be calmer, things are going to go better if your whole team is on board. And you don't want your obvious character 3 person going, it's all going to be fine, we just need to do it. Because they've not done any planning. So we really do want to get each person on a team who has a different default position to at least hear everyone else's default position and be part of the inquiry and negotiation of coming up with a much better unified plan.
And if we're doing it on behalf of characters, I notice this when I do my stand-up comedy. It's fascinating. I used to do stand-up comedy as me. Then I developed my Professor Sebastian Longsword, and I can go anywhere as him. I don't have a moment's self-doubt because any barbs or criticisms that I might get are not me. They're directed at my character. And so it's like water off a duck's back. And in fact, it just makes the professor double down and go deeper into his character. And that's a fantastic way. If ever you're going to do comedy, do a character because it gives you that extra bit of resilience. But here in the workplace, how good is that? It's your characters in to play. No one gets worried if their little horse on the Monopoly board gets knocked over because it's just a token, but it gives us an insight. Now, David, I think what the best thing we can do here is, in running a brain huddle, here I've got 4 questions. Each one aligns to this. So the process that Jill would be recommending is if you're coming around to make some decisions at work, try doing it in this process. Ask first, right, with character 1 in mind, what are the facts? What are the costs? What's the timelines? What systems do we need for this thing we're talking about? How will it impact those things? Facts, costs, timelines, etc. And once you've answered that, then think about your character 2 questions. So what could go wrong? And how could we minimize it? Gee, David, this links so much to our planning days and our planning sessions that we run.
Yes.
Character 3 would then ask, well, we would ask on behalf of character 3, fantastic. Now, how will this feel for the team? Is anyone going to be scared? Is it excited? What is the story here? Are there ways to make it more enjoyable and engaging? And then to honor character 4, we need to finish off by asking, does this decision align with our values, our long-term vision, our brand, dare I say, for the business and the family? There is a very simple prototype for bringing extra depth to a decision that you're contemplating within your business, exercising the different masses of neurons that we've got in different parts of our brain.
It's a very nice way to go because rather than something apparently being this arbitrary system imposed by a business guru, here we're saying is work with your neurology. Because we've all got similar neurology.
Yes.
We've all got the capacity to do things in these 4 ways. which means we can all understand each other if we take the time. And that's going to lead to much better outcomes.
I now call this meeting closed, and that's my character 1 who was noticing the time.
My character 2 was glad there wasn't a catastrophe.
My character 3 is curious to know what our next segment's going to be about.
Character 4 is already thinking about the next series.
Our 4 Ps. Number 3, problems. These are the marketing challenges keeping you up at night. As Oscar said, we ask questions for the best reason possible. Simple curiosity, no hidden agenda, just genuine interest in what's actually happening.
In the problem segment now, I'm going to shock you, David. Are you ready to be shocked?
I'm ready to be shocked. I've got my foot on the floor. I'm touching a timber table. I am probably electrocution proof.
You know how in this segment I often thump my sermon notes and I spew poison out into the world because there are so many bad things impacting my people? I'm going to turn the tail and actually give praise.
Good.
I was needing to spend some money today on using Bendigo Bank and pay for the hire for the Mercury Cinema, where I'll do a plug in here. I'm doing a History Month show with Keith Conlon called History Hit Parade, which I hope you buy tickets to. I'll put the link in the show notes. May 11 and May 17, so move fast. Is that okay, David, that I snuck that in?
I think it's absolutely fine.
You're coming on May 17, aren't you?
17th, Sunday afternoon.
Perfect.
If I remember correctly, 5 p.m.
4
to
p.m.
4 p.m. Yes. Okay. I knew it was Sunday afternoon.
Anyway, link in show notes. And it was a new provider. And so I pumped in the BSB number and the account number and their name. And a number of banks are doing this now, and I take my hat off to them, but I'm using Bendigo as an example. It runs a check and says, yes, other people have used these credentials lined up with this business in the past. Tick 1 in our fight against scams. Why wasn't it done sooner, I want to ask? But that's a point for another day. I've got to stay positive, David. I promised.
We like the OSCO system working better.
Yeah, it's fantastic. So others do that. That's good. Also, having just been using a conveyancer, there is quite a scam where people intercept emails from businesses like conveyancers and recreate the invoice and change the bank details. So you should always ring a lawyer, a conveyancer, when you're doing big sums of money, because you want to make sure and check with a human that you're sending it to the right people. However, this little step the banks do goes a big way to protecting us. That wasn't it, David. I then went to the next screen and up come a big message. I think it's because it was over $1,000. I don't know. Protect yourself from scams, it says. Who are you paying? Is it too good to be true? Are you feeling pressured? This is building in Jill Bolte Taylor's pause. Isn't that clever?
Very.
And then I have to tick a box saying, I understand. And I'm confident this payment's safe to send. Now, at the moment, my character 1 and 3 love the logic, emotionally very satisfied. Or it might be character 1 and 2 are now feeling, hang on a minute, this is the bank getting plausible deniability if I am sending money to a scammer that I went in all eyes open. Oh, there's an underbelly, David.
Yeah, but that's what character 2 does. It takes a good situation and makes sure that we've acknowledged the worst possible variable.
And then I was able to send it. And then it sent a 2-factor check from the bank app to make sure it was all good. So I just want to say hats off to Bendigo Bank and any other banks doing this, because for whatever reason, it's something to help support people and businesses from losing money in a terrible way.
are 4 Ps. Number 4, perspicacity. Let's examine a campaign from the past and ask, would it work today? As Oscar Wilde believed, our one duty to history is to rewrite it. So let's see what we can learn.
David, you seem to know a lot.
About what?
I'm going to ask you in general things. Who is Melissa Mentor?
Until we were talking about this over lunch, I wouldn't have known. So I am going to pretend I don't know and plead ignorance.
She's the Senior Vice President, Global Brand and Communication at Peanuts Worldwide. Peanuts, featuring good old Charlie Brown. Do you have any memories of Peanuts from your very early years, or listening to cartoons later, or anything like that? How does Snoopy and Co., how do they loom in your imagination?
My uncle loved Peanuts, and he used to describe the drawn cartoons to me. So all my memories of Peanuts are hearing about the cartoons in his voices.
Well, the reason we're bringing it in the perspicacity segment is it's been going for a long time now, and we like to reflect on whether it still has relevancy in our current age. And you might be surprised that the answer here is yes. Does that surprise you?
It doesn't, because anything that can cross cultural and time boundaries so effectively is working at a very fundamental human level.
And there was something, before we look at this in more depth, that she said on the Marketing Over Coffee podcast not long ago as to why she thinks Snoopy cuts through in many different cultures too. Let's have a listen to what she said.
And the other thing that I think is unique about Peanuts is that all you have to do to like Peanuts is you have to be a human. So everybody around the world can relate to Peanuts because they're human messages. Whereas if you're living in a different country and you don't relate to something American, or you don't relate to something in Europe, it's harder to relate. But with Peanuts, it's like everybody can relate to Charlie Brown not kicking the football, or feeling a little crabby like Lucy, or needing some security like Linus. It's just human emotion. And I think that's why on social media we find such success.
Now I think about it, David, I think what she's touched on, the emotional aspect or archetypes that the characters in the Peanuts world embody, made them ready-made to live in relevance forever. And in fact, I think they would apply to all literature where the characters are clearly embodying things we can relate to within ourselves. They hold up a mirror to parts of ourselves. I think there's the success.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if it's Peanuts or Tolstoy. You've still got this thing of core characters. 100 years ago, we would have looked at this in Jungian terms of which archetype. But if we relate it to sort of Jill Bolte's 4 characters, I find it even more persuasive why great characters and why great groups of characters continue to captivate audiences.
Well, in fact, I'm glad you mentioned Jill here. Let's have a look. If we actually, because she talks about the brain having 4 characters, there are 4 main characters in Peanuts. Did Charles Schulz know this consciously or subconsciously? Who knows? Character 1 who is the planner. We agree is Lucy. She's adult-oriented. She is role-oriented. She is the serious one.
Yep, it's all time-bound. It's got ego. It's linear planning. She compares and contrasts things, not to see if they're similar, but to see if they're different, to pick what's best. Yeah, she's so character 1, it's not funny.
Character 2 is Charlie Brown himself. He has this, I'm going to mess this up kind of voice. That's the anxious protector side of a character. Number 3, which is the explorer or playful side, is Snoopy. He's daydreaming, he's music-loving, he's risk-taking, he's got the Joe Cool, he's got different characters of himself. That's Snoopy in that sweet zone, character 3, which I think is my favourite character. And then character 4, which is the sage integrated. That's Linus. Very gentle, values-based. He takes a moral tone, take care of each other. How shocked are you that they map so accurately?
I'm not really shocked, and I wish we could more easily get access to the equivalent cultural icons from other cultures that we're less familiar with, because I think it wouldn't matter where we looked. We'd keep finding versions of this that could easily be shared and that people would understand.
So the reason we have it in this segment is, would it work today? Well, I think we've got a great example of the enduring value. April 2023, the Red Cross went to the Peanuts Corporation. They were struggling to get people to donate blood. And you would understand that in the times of COVID. So what they did is they had a campaign where if you donated blood in a certain month, you would get a Snoopy T-shirt. I forget what the saying was that it had on it, but it was something, I give blood, or giving blood is cool, or something like that. They got 14,000 first-time donors with a 40% spike in appointments, with 3/4 of those donors being younger than 34 years of age. That says longevity. That says relevance. The fact that it's such a young skew just shows you this has cut through at different levels. It's an amazing story.
And the ultimate lesson in marketing, and that is what's going on at the human level. What do we want to connect with at the human level? Because if we get it right, then we're making evergreen products.
So there we go. Next time you see a Snoopy cartoon, there are Snoopy movies and all sorts of things that happen. Charles Schulz, sadly, no longer with us, but his gift of peanuts lingers. And I think that's a nice note to end on. We're topping this episode with nuts, Dave.
Oh, Charlie Brown! I'll hold the football and you kick it.
You say you'll hold it, but what you really mean is you'll pull it away and I'll land on my back and I'll kill myself.
Thanks for listening to Talking About Marketing. If you found this helpful, please share it with someone who might benefit. And if you're so inclined, leave a rating in your podcast app. Both help more than you think. Steve and David welcome your thoughts, which you can send to podcast@talkedaboutmarketing.com. That's podcast@talkedaboutmarketing.com. Want to continue the conversation beyond the podcast? You can book 20 minutes with Steve at talkedaboutmarketing.com. No cost, no obligation. And we'll leave the last word to Oscar Wilde. There's only one thing worse than being talked about, and that's not being talked about.